Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and here, of course, with my cohort, Jan Moray. And Jan has chosen our topic for today, and she is asking the question that I ask real frequently, and that is, what if you could? And she's looking at the fact that sometimes, someone will either maybe make a comment, or you'll think someone can do something, and you'll really begin to give them the, oh, but you can, and if you could do it this way or do it that way, or maybe give other suggestions. And yet, how does it change the person if you just ask, what if you could? So Jan, what are you thinking on this?
Yeah. Yes, I have to admit I got my inspiration from you on this one, because you ask it a lot and I don't. And I want to start making that part of my habits is to ask that question, because I do find myself, when you really believe in somebody, you think they can do it, and they're saying, no, I can't do this, it's too hard, or I'm not good in this. And you try to tell them, encourage them and say, but oh, yes, you can. You've got all these talents, you do all this stuff. But what you're really doing when you say that is you're not validating their thoughts. You're pretty much saying, you don't know, I know better, you can do it. And that just automatically puts the other person on the defensive, where they're going to prove you wrong, even though you're trying to prove that they're this wonderful person can have all these capabilities, and they're going to still prove you wrong. And so I'm thinking that I need to start adding that phrase to my vocabulary, instead of trying to invalidate what they're thinking and saying, okay, how can I, I'm not going to agree with them to say, no, you can't, but just ask that question. Well, what if you could? It's like imagine the impossible. And, what if you could do it? How would it work? Not saying that, oh, you're wrong. Yes, you can do it and you can make it happen. Is that, well, let's pretend. It's kind of like that, magical question, what is your perfect world? What do you really want out of life? And so what if you were able to get there and to do it? Then what would it look like? What would you do? How would it change things? I just think that's so powerful to phrase it that way, because our first intention is to argue. At least mine is. I guess I'm always arguing about one thing or another. And instead of getting into that argument, just put the question in somebody's mind and see what kind of a response that you get from that. So Mona, let's talk about times that you've said that phrase to somebody. And
well, yes, and I do. I said a lot. Well, what, and I say it to me. I started off just talking to me. Right. What if I could? And then I ask people, well, what if you could? And I find that it's just like a deer caught in the headlights.
Right.
But yeah. Be comfortable with that. Be comfortable with that stark reality, because what it is, it's helping the person to self-evaluate, and they don't even realize it. Well, what if I could? What if I could? And then also, can you at least try?
Right.
At least try. And then, of course, I like to go with my bookends. If someone says, well, I tried, and it didn't work, I say, yeah, but you did it your way 342 times, and that didn't work either. So how about how about you look at something else? What else could you do?
So it opens up the possibilities and helps them to expand their thinking beyond where they've been stuck. So if they're looking at other things, other ways they can approach something.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at the fact that how our mind works, and it is always in tune to our self-talk. And if we're saying, I can't do it, well, even if it's just to ourselves, we're not saying it to a word, but we're up to anyone, but we're thinking that I can't, then what happens is the body, well, I mean, it's a good master in that it wants to do what we tell it to do. And so if we're saying I can't, that body, that the chemist up in the mind is going to release this chemical that says, well, you're really kind of tired. And it may even put in a drop or two of discouragement. What makes you think you can do it? You've never done anything like that.
Or it's going to be too hard or too much work.
And we begin believing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said that frequently, I said, well, you know, instead of looking at it as being hard, look at it as being not easy. And we're not diminishing it. It's not, it's still the same, it's still the same concrete block. But if you look at it as being hard to move, then it becomes impossible.
Yeah.
As old Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right.
You're right.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. And that's not to be arrogant and say you can move every block, because there are those that we can bloody our head, but they're not budging.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And, and I think too, with when you're starting to tell yourself, rationalize why you can't do something, why something's too hard, you're starting that narrative that you're hearing over and over again, and eventually you will believe it. And so if you can change your narrative, and instead of saying, I can't do it, is, well, I know this is difficult, but I really want to get over there. And in order to get where I want to go, I have to change something now. So let me try and keep trying. And maybe I need to do something differently, or maybe I need somebody to help me. Or, you know, there's ultimate possibilities of ways that you can try to accomplish whatever it is that's holding you back.
right.
And then once you keep talking that personal narrative, that positive narrative, then eventually you believe it. And of course, sometimes you can believe that so much that you're hitting your head against the wall all the time. But you know, there's always a balance in everything.
Yeah, we're talking about the both and coming kind of middle ground where it is easier to work in. And it's that, you know, well, think about it. Think about it. Give some thought. Don't automatically dismiss it. And then I know something that I like to say to people frequently is that I'll give you room to grow.
Yeah.
You know, I think I see it in you. I can see things that you can't see, but I can see it in you. I can see you doing that, overcoming that, being that. And then, you know, and if it's as long as we're trying to tell them you, they're pushing against it.
Right. Yes.
As in, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that, you're fantastic, you can do it. They're just pushing against it because it has been difficult. It's not easy. But, you know, well, I think you can. Again, you know, they may think you're crazy, but well,
but they don't have to agree with you, or they don't have to say right away, yes, I can. But you've planted that seed in their brain that maybe I can, and hopefully that seed will grow and develop into something better for them.
Yeah. And then, you know, I tried, well, try again. Because what else do you need to do? How do you need to shift it? How do you need to make a little bit of changes there?
Yeah.
And what else could you do? Just kind of keep going back there to help the individual, but not all at one time. You know, give a little space there for the growth and for the thinking about it. That, well, what else could you do? And I'll give you room to grow.
I have a silly little example here about being able, you know, telling yourself that you can do it. And this tells people about how strange I am, which you probably already know that. But I love working in the yard. And my the thing that I'm after now is I'm getting rid of all the Nandina that are in my yard. And the ones that we have here, they're invasive and they grow humongous. And so I've made a point to get rid of everyone in my yard. We have a big yard, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, but I'm sure we've got thousands of them. Most of them are small enough that they come out pretty easily, but others are huge. If you've ever seen their root balls, they're massive. They're really heavy. And I remember when I first started it, it's like, oh wow, these things are too big. I can't get them out of here. But my husband told me a little secret about using a big crowbar kind of, and to kind of wedge them out of there. And I've been tackling bigger and bigger and bigger ones, and there isn't a single root ball that I haven't been able to get out of the ground. And so that's, you know, so at first I'm going into it thinking that, oh wow, this is too much for me, I can't do it. But now I'm getting to the point where I want the next challenge. I want the next one to come to me.
I'll show you.
I'll show you, exactly right. And so, but it gives me such satisfaction. And each bigger one that I managed to get out of the ground is, I did that. And my husband even gets proud of me. He just laughs at me, that I'm so determined to make it happen. But you can think of that of any obstacle in your life. There's a lot of different ways to get to it, because I mean, you've got to figure out what the enemy is, where all the roots are going, and to kind of tame them and figure it out. And so I think it's with any problem, any obstacle, you have to understand what you're fighting against. And maybe you kind of chip away at little pieces here to weaken it so that you can tackle it and move forward. So
Yeah. So what about your muscles? Are they?
I think they get sore. Especially my hands, but my shoulders as well. They're getting a workout, and so I figure there too, I'm getting a workout there as well.
All right. So it has more benefits than
it does.
You originally think.
It does. But I think that's with anything in life, especially when you're kind of reluctant to follow through with it and to pursue it, is you're building different muscles and you're building different capabilities, and you just keep exercising, you keep using them, and you get stronger. You've given them that room to grow, right?
Yeah, it's
They've
doable.
grown.
Yeah. So, and trying to convince someone, my Aunt Irma always says, trying to convince someone against their will, they're of the same opinion still.
Yes.
And while we can remember those little sillies better than something that's real, it's because, I figured it out. The reason we can remember those silly little things is because we are made to have fun. We are made to enjoy. We are made to try to pull out a root ball that won't come out.
That's right.
And so that we can. We're made to do that. We're created that way.
Mona, I missed the second half of what you just said. How to convince people against their will.
No, a person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I mean, have you ever agreed with anybody just because you want them to shut up?
Okay.
You're still of the same opinion. And so that's why, what if you could help you begin to self-evaluate? Because although I can tell you, but if I do try to encourage you as to the fact that I think you can, I want to verbalize it in such a way as that I see you as smart enough to do that. I see you as, so that they're not pushing back quite so hard.
Right.
Again, they may think I'm crazy as a loon, but so what?
But I think that message kind of sinks in a little bit. Well, Mona has confidence in me, so what if I could?
Right. And I want Jerry to know that I am being very conscious of not comparing it to a loon. So I apologize for doing it, because I have nothing against them. But sometimes, we don't need to have an example to say it. It's just that you may think I'm crazy, or I think you are not crazy.
Yeah. So it's funny the way our mind works, and you have to watch what you say, and depending upon whether you really want to encourage somebody. I mean, it's a whole thing too about doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I mean, what we do is we just start fussing at people and telling them, you can do it. Don't be such a wet noodle. You can do this. And, and none of that stuff works to motivate them. But if you change the wording, like you said, to, I think you can. I think you have it in you. And what if you could? You're not trying to force your opinion upon them. You're trying to get them to think about it from a little different perspective.
Right. And then, as you said in the little blurb that you put for today's topic, is what would be the difference? How would that impact someone? And it has been my experience that the impact is kind of the end of the conversation
Yeah.
to a degree. And so it's learning to be comfortable with that. It's learning to be, whenever you can see that someone is stumped, that, well, you've asked me a poser here and I would have to think about it, whether they
Mhm.
admit it or not. When we can sense that, to be comfortable with it.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, if people have been told all their lives that they can't do something or they're unable to do something, then that narrative also gets stuck in their head, and they believe it because that's what they've heard. And that, you know, that excuse is used all the time. Well, I've never been able to do that. I can't do that. And so that the question, what if you could, just changes it. And they still may not be able to, but maybe they can. And maybe they never really thought about that they could do it because they've always been told that they can't do it.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, in looking at choice theory and lead management, especially looking at the ways that we relate to people. And we relate to people as, you know, as child to parent. And sometimes those things that was said to us, we take them and we hear them in our mind as though it's still being said, and we're still seeing us as the child
Yeah.
that is not quite capable. It's not that you can't drive a car, it's just that you're 10. It's not that you'll never be able to drive a car. And as you get a little bit older, we'll begin to help you learn the mechanics of it, and you know, the safety zones to go. And so you need to grow into it.
Mona,
And
oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned Joyce theory and lead management.
I did.
Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Joyce, who's Joyce?
Choice.
Oh, choice. I'm sorry,
Choice.
my hearing bad. Joyce. Okay, thank you.
Choice theory and lead management of the different type of relationships that we have. And sometimes you can have a really difficult relationship with an employer that's telling you what to do, but you're hearing it as though it was a elder brother or a parent telling you what to do, and you wasn't about to do it. And as we can put a silencer on those voices. Now, if it's good advice, take it. If it's not, but don't take it to extreme, regardless if it's, you know.
Whether you like the advice or not.
Yeah. And look at the fact that, you know, you're not, what age are you now? As opposed to what age were you when that instruction was given to you?
Or even as we age, and you know, you start hearing the narrative, well, you're too old to go dig roots out of the yard. You know, that's too much hard work, and that's too, you have to, you know, that I mean, I've heard people say, don't overdo it, you know, don't burn yourself out. It's like, don't tell me what to do. You know, so I'm not even going to worry about how old I'm getting. I'm still able to, so I'm still going to do it. For me, it's still, you know, what if I can do it? Nobody's going to stop me and tell me to quit. I'm going to keep pushing forward and do the things that I want to do.
Right. Kind of goes back to that. I'm not allergic.
Right.
Didn't you talk about that one time? In fact,
Yeah.
I'm not allergic to that.
Yeah.
I know my daughter, you know, when she was younger, had a lot of allergies, and took it to the vet, and they figuring out what kind of allergies it was. And one of them was to cats. And she said, I am not allergic to cats. I will not be allergic to cats. And you know what? It's not an absolute, but it certainly, that mind says, oh, no, you know, I heard myself say to me, I'm not allergic to this. And there's a lot of truth to the fact that our mind will begin to work around and say, you're right.
And Nancy said the statute of limitations has expired on most of our childhood traumas.
That's right. They have
Yeah.
expired. It's
Yeah.
time to grow up.
And it's just time, if you really want to do it, then just figure out how to do it. I mean, I think I've been a fighter all my life. And when I want to do something, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And when I see people holding back or giving excuses on why they can't do it, it's, I feel like saying, well, now my new phrase is, well, what if you could? What if you could? You want to do that.
At the same time, don't automatically discard that advice as if, are you not glad that you found the poker to
Right.
get in there and disassimilate those roots so that you could get them out?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. That's something that I can, remember for a long, long time, in that, okay, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to figure out how to do it. Now, I can't make other people change what they're going to do, but there's a lot I can do for myself, and to change things for the better for me. And I know I had that attitude going through in the corporate world, and now in retirement, and so I think you just got to keep going and go after. Don't let anybody hold you back,
Including yourself.
Right. And so remember that question: what if I could? What if I could? How can I do it?
Yeah, and kind of maybe I could. Maybe it's the first that said if, and still that questioning, and well, maybe so. And I know, especially in working with the prisoners, they would always say, "Oh, you can't do that." And I thought, blah blah blah. Well, maybe so, maybe no. Maybe so, maybe no. I mean, if you just go with that, if you get a little oil to it, you get a little leeway there. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, because there are some things. I mean, you may want to be 5'2", but we're not going to shrink to being 5'2". I mean, I can remember when I didn't like being 5'7". I thought if I was 5'2", then everything in the world would be hunky dory. But that's not a problem. If you can't be who you are, wherever you are, whoever you are, then we're not ever going to grow and expand and become who we really are.
Now, I think that's very important. I believe in that so much. You have to accept who you are. And because then otherwise you're going through your life trying to be someone you're not. And that's not fulfilling. Whereas if I can accept who I am and the kind of person I am, and those are my flaws, and I can try to do something about them, or maybe that's what makes my character. That's what makes people like me, is because I say those things or do those things. Or, but if you can't accept yourself for who you are, then how can you expect others to? Or if you try to be somebody you're not, then you're always going to be living a lie, because it's not your true character.
Yeah. So what is it you want in your life?
Right.
Yeah. And are you willing, what if you could? And if you begin to think, well, maybe I can, are you willing to take responsibility for that?
Yes.
And then looking at all the different ways that we take responsibility, not just a yes as an answer, but what about your actions? What about your attitude? What about your choices? What about your thoughts? Sometimes it starts just with changing our mind.
Yes. Yeah, that's the first. That's the first thing, because thoughts becomes things, right? We talked about that before.
Exactly. And then looking at, well, I think I can, and I'm willing to try. Well, then when? If not today, then what day? Because we can really get ourselves, yes, okay, I've got that gouger now, and I know where those root balls are, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to get, but when are you going to do it? If it's because, if we, we need that the chemistry in the mind to give us that drop of adrenaline that say, even though it's going to make your muscles sore and you'll get tired, you really can do it.
Because I know I'm going to feel good about myself when it's done, when I get that thing out of the ground.
Yeah. And so you need to have some kind of a date on there. Otherwise it can just go by and well, I'm going to, but we don't do it because there is no magic tomorrow. It's not going tomorrow. Everything is not going to be easier. As a matter of fact, the more we start the planning or the mind changing or the incrementals that are due today, tomorrow will be easier. But as long as we put it off to later, it's going to get harder.
And we're prolonging it, prolonging the agony.
Right. And the roots are growing bigger.
They are.
All kinds of roots are growing bigger.
Yeah.
The one of thinking that we really can't do it. And then, of course, it kind of goes back to who can you control with choice theory, the theory that we can only control ourselves. But if not you, then who?
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, it's not necessarily if it's to be, it's up to me, because we do need other people. But at least you need to be in the game to do it.
And you have to be the one driving it.
Right. You're a portion of it.
Well, I mean, if it's for your gain and you want something, you advocate the help of others, but you don't just turn it over to the other people to do it for you. You're in the game with them, with their support and them propping you up and helping you out, but you're the main person moving it forward.
I'd like to introduce a slightly different angle toward this conversation. And I am from California, so this might be kind of silly, but I'm going to do it anyway. What was the name of the plant, Jan, that you're?
Nandina.
Nandina.
Yeah.
Has anybody thought about the Nandina's point of view?
Yeah. Oh, I have.
How does the Nandina feel about being pulled out and basically killed? You ever look at Nandina's point of view here? Or?
I have, because I have said that I feel like I'm creating Nandina genocide because,
yes, you are. Yes, you are.
because I have targeted that species and I'm eradicating it. Yes, I do feel like I am. Yes, I feel like I'm demolishing the whole species. But you know what? It's on the list of invasive plants at least for the state of Texas. So I feel like I'm, okay there because it's on the list of things to get rid of in the state.
But maybe you're just rationalizing,
Well, could be that could be.
Maybe
but but you know what? Now that I'm pulling them up, other plants are growing in their place. So they were keeping other things from growing.
Maybe someday in the future, they'll find that Nandina is the cure for cancer.
Well, they might, but there's plenty of them around. And they're very prolific. It won't take much. I don't think there's any risk that they will become extinct. But the birds it's poisonous to the birds and animals.
Oh,
so not even the deer will eat them.
Georgie likes the zoomy.
Excuse me?
Did you make a salad out of them?
No.
Are they good for anything?
Take care, Dee.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I have to admit they are pretty because they have the new growth is red. So it's got a nice red growth. And then they've got the little flowers when they start blooming and then they turn into red berries. And so it is a pretty plant. But the problem is you cut one stalk and 3 more grow back. and it just takes over the whole place.
The berries are not edible?
They're not edible, they're poisonous.
Oh, well.
So, in fact, I think that's what got me started because I used to just cut them back. But then I read in the local newspaper or the news magazine, whatever, that they're poisonous to wildlife and to birds and stuff. So it's like, well, if they don't have any benefit, then
What's that, Dee?
out of here. So.
Well, I'll drop my advocacy for Nandina then.
But it's a good point. I did think of that. And I mean that does bring up a good point. You need to think about, what who are you hurting by doing what you want to do? And that's another
Yeah.
thing Lasser said, is that, you try to meet your basic needs, but you don't do it at the expense of somebody else. And so you have to make sure that you're not hurting in anyone else when you do those things. So that is a good
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and it's always good to look at as many sides as possible. Maybe we can. What if you could? But then it's also looking at the fact that there are different sides to everything. And is that we are willing to look at those different sides and realizing that so on, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, maybe so, maybe no. And that it's an endless ongoing cycle for good or for not so good. And how will we contribute to it peacefully?
All right. I guess we'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.
Okay.